I want to follow up on what Mr. McNerney was just talking about. So, Dr. Few, I have a 2-year-old Toyota Camry hybrid that the sticker says gets 40 miles a gallon.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite get that, but it's a lot better than a regular Camry gets.
That's
About
right.
13, 14 miles a gallon better than a regular Camry, which is the most popular mid-sized vehicle in the United States and has been for 7 or 8 years. And I'm very happy with it. So what can you do for me, Dr. Frank? I have A123. A123 is up in my district.
Right.
They do retrofits.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about what's possible in this retrofit business area over the next 10 years and how it can become appealing to people to take a vehicle that gets 40 or 30, and with some investment, get it up to 60, 70, 80. What's the formula for making that work?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that you brought up in that one question. The first thing is going to the plug-in hybrid is really not about increasing fuel economy. It's about displacing oil. And because when you go to a plug-in hybrid, you're using electricity and not gasoline. So yes, if you calculate in some funny way, you get better fuel economy. But I like to look at it, if you saw my chart on the board, as displacing oil and on an annual basis. So I calculate that a plug-in hybrid with 50, 60 miles of all-electric range would displace 90% of the gasoline with electricity, and 10% of the gasoline will be used on that particular car for the same driving. Now, would you say that's going from 20 miles per gallon to 200 miles per gallon? You could say it that way, but that's really not what's going on. What you're doing is you're displacing energy from liquid fuel to electricity. And the most important thing about electricity, of course, is one-eighth the cost.
Well, the only reason I use that term is that it makes it accessible to people. So when they
That's
invented the
right.
automobile, they called it a horseless carriage, so because that's all people knew, all right? And they called it horsepower, whatever that
right, I
meant, right?
know.
But it was just to kind of get
Unfortunately.
people who are already using one set of terms to get into the new technology.
I
The same
understand,
thing is
yeah.
true when we go to wireless phones. Why do you need, it has nothing to do with wires. Why are you even putting wire in there? But because people are used to making phone calls on wires. So that's the
No,
only
I-
reason
I
I'm using
understand
the analogy, the analysis that I'm using. So, so is it something? Well, let's just take us out 10 years then, Doctor. And I'd like each of you, maybe even thinking especially you, Ms. Zoe. We sell 15, 17 million vehicles in the United States every year.
That's right.
Well, let's go out 10 years. Let's keep the price of a gallon of gasoline at $4 a gallon.
Yeah,
Let's
you
have
could
this
do that.
revolution coming in from Nissan, from, the Chinese and others, and the innovation that's going to be spurred by us having raised the fuel economy standards from 25 to 35 miles per gallon. What does our fleet look like 10 years from now? I'd like you, Dr. Frank, and you, Ms. Zoe, to answer that question. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, my feeling on this is people are going to look at how much it costs them to go a mile, every mile, and at the current time, cars cost 15 cents a mile, roughly, at $4 a gallon. And with electricity, using electricity from the grid, the current grid, it's about 2 cents a mile. And if you go to solar, it comes down even further. So that's, I think, ultimately what people are going to do. They're going to look at how much it costs them to go a given distance and do their job. And that difference between 2 cents and that's really cost of living and lifestyle.
So you think it's going to be dramatic in 10 years?
I think so. I think people are going to migrate towards something like the plug-in hybrid, and GM Volt is going to demonstrate that for us. So when people realize.
But even there, General Motors is still fighting increases in the fuel economy center. So even as they're saying they're going to introduce the Volt in 2010, they're saying, but don't get too excited about what will be there by 2016. So don't try to increase from, 31 miles per gallon, which will be the same by
I've seen this happen at GM. You saw what happened to the electric car. Are they real? Are they really
What do you think?
sincere about it?
What do you think, Doctor?
Well, I think that this time they are real. And the reason is they look around the world and they see a peak in the production of oil. And actually, that's why it doesn't make sense to drill, because we can't
Thank you,
drill our
Doctor.
way out.
And Ms. Zoe?
I too think it'll look dramatically different. I think the question of how different will be a function of how much we enable it to happen quickly. One of my daydreams is to have an energy core that actually, I've been in the energy business for a long time, but that goes up and down streets and neighborhoods and town centers and finally does those energy efficiency retrofits that we've been talking about for a long time, and I know you have been talking about them. And they're really simple things. They create jobs, but it's the stuff like insulation and thermostats and all that. But as we were talking on the break, we could also provide the infrastructure so that people could plug in their cars, their existing cars, and do the retrofits if we wanted the plug-in hybrid thing to happen faster. So as we're going street by street, we do the car infrastructure retrofit at the same time so people can plug in.
But this is a great panel. Were there any partnerships that were created during that break by any chance? I hope so. Dr. York?
Yeah, may I just add a comment to your point in the last gentleman's question too on these hybrid cars? You have to have the grid to support this. There is no wireless transmission of electricity, so you need the grid to support. And just one data point for you to consider, Con Ed, Consolidated Edison in New York City, concluded a couple of years ago that a 5% penetration of plug-in hybrid vehicles in Manhattan would increase the rate of electricity demand by 50%, and they just don't have a grid to support that. That's what they concluded and stated publicly.
Who concluded that?
Consolidated Edison. So in fact,
What about this argument that when people are plugging in, they're plugging in at off-peak hours and that you don't need a dramatic increase in the electrical
Well, we've
generating
all been-
capacity? Huh?
we've all been in New York City, and the lights stay on pretty much well into the night. And it's during the day when the taxis are running around; they have to charge up periodically. When the delivery vehicles are coming in, so yes, there'll be a lot of off-peak charging by residential folks in your home, your apartment. But there's a lot of other vehicles going around that need to charge up all the time. So just a 5% penetration, it gives a great increase.
You're
in
not
the
that
demand.
optimistic then.
I know. I am optimistic in the following sense. We're working with Con Ed right now. They recognize it, and they're taking action. They want to create the Internet of Power in Manhattan, and we're about to connect the first 2 substations in Manhattan to start that process. All those things have to happen for the vision of 10 years from now to actually come to completion.
Okay, and I'll let you have the final word, Dr. Frank. Dr. Frank?
Yeah, that's the intelligent grid, that's what we're referring
Yeah.
to. I calculate with an intelligent grid, we don't have to increase the power at all. As a matter of fact, PNNL, the National Lab of Northwest, they calculate that actually the current grid has enough energy to support 80% of the cars in this country
Yeah.
today. So there's not a problem, but,
Maybe we can get them to come in and work with New York City, okay? That might
well,
be,
maybe.
uh,
But the key is an intelligent grid. We have to have a smart plug. That plug doesn't take energy out. Batteries is one of those things that don't have to be charged all the time. You plug it in, that doesn't mean energy has to flow.
Right.
It only has to flow at the right time. And that's what an intelligent grid is all about.